situated. Again, out through those doors, to the end of the corridor, turn right, and there's one either side of that corridor. If anyone feels unwell, please make yourself known to Kathy at the back or to myself, both of whom are first aiders. Please ensure your mobile phones are switched off or turned to silent. The church does have a loop system, so if you have a hearing aid, please do the necessary. But if anybody is unable to hear our speaker or myself, please just raise a hand. We will be looking out for that to let us know that you're not hearing us. Carolyn mentioned about the video. We also have a photographer, Amber, who will be taking shots throughout the afternoon, just still photography. If you don't want to be photographed, please avoid Amber. See there. It's going to be mainly people in the front rows, and I have checked with the Western family, and when we actually do the unveiling of the exhibition. But just please be aware that Amber will be going around with the camera, and those are going to be records of today's event. The plan of this afternoon, I'm going to initially introduce the project to those of you who aren't familiar with it, and then hand over to Naomi, who is going to be talking about the life and work of Rosemary Rutherford. Then we're going to have a formal opening of our exhibition area and refreshments. We have no raffle today. You'll be glad the ubiquitous raffle has been avoided, just for a change, and we are going to have some bubbly and cake. So it's a slightly different, slightly more celebratory session this afternoon. However, there are varying items for sale, and all donations and monies raised will go towards the project. So whilst the majority of people present today have attended one or more of our previous talks, we've organised exploring various aspects of the evolution of this ancient church. I believe there may be a significant number of you who've not attended. And you may be wondering why we're putting these on and what Project Rutherford is all about. Well, blame the woodpeckers. It all started with these beautiful but peskily hungry birds who love to eat the roofing on our spire. In seeking to raise the necessary money to repair the entire spire with oak-backed shakes, one of our ventures has been to run a series of talks and tours exploring different aspects of the history of this beautiful ancient church, and we've called these People and Stone. Each talk involved quite a lot of research and proved so interesting that we have captured material in publications, and these are available this afternoon. So, for example, the first one, that Neil Whitman. These are our publications, and they are available if you are interested. Unfortunately, COVID curtailed our fundraising efforts. However, Reverend Diana, then our associate priest, managed to secure a grant from the National Lottery Heritage Fund, and that would enable us to repair the spire and repoint the tower, on the condition that we develop our project to enhance our community involvement. Project Rutherford was born. The project has 3 aims and 3 arms. It focuses on the fresco in our historic Norman Round Tower as a centrepiece to a heritage project of learning, conservation and well-being. And it achieves these aims by restoring the tower and spire, focusing on the artistry of Rosemary Rutherford, and developing the interior of the tower. We are extremely fortunate to be able to draw on the artistic work of Rosemary because her father was vicar to this church for many years. During his time, she created the beautiful fresco, which I'm sure you will see later on this afternoon, and also 4 of our stained glass windows, including our east window. Rosemary was a skilled East Anglian artist whose work has been long neglected. And in reviving an interest in her work, we aim to attract individuals to the church and also involve the local community and children in varying aspects of her art and of the church. In particular, we have created an exhibition about her, focusing particularly on her church artistry. Once the building work is completed, a fresco will be conserved and the interior of the tower, which houses it, will be refurbished to be used as a quiet place for reflection and meditation. And hopefully it will enable the spiritual nature of her work to offer solace to those in need. Although fully funded at the initial stage, the building work on the tower and spire has been fraught with complications. Whenever is it otherwise in church building projects? Once all the shingles and the battens were removed, the integrity of the ancient timbers were revealed as being less than ideal, with rather Heath Robinson repair work following the bomb damage in the war. The bill to restore this amounted to an extra £85,000. This is on top of the £205,000 that we initially had to raise. A number of charities have kindly donated, and we have raised £50,000 of that so far. Still a way to go. A problem with the scaffolding design further complicated the work, causing it to stop in November. This has now been remodelled and the builders resumed work in February. This element of the project was due to have finished last October. It's now scheduled for the 9th of June. The topping out ceremony, whenever it does happen, is going to prove a time of great celebration for many. I would, however, like to take this opportunity to thank all our donors, without whose generosity we would not have been able to undertake the work you see today. Initially, of course, we want to thank the National Lottery Heritage Fund, without whose generosity we wouldn't have started the project. Unfortunately, I don't think anyone is here from the fund. We did invite them. No hands go up, though, so they haven't been able to attend today. Then, when the going got tough, and we needed that extra 85,000, we really thank Friends of Essex Churches, the Round Tower Churches Trust, FSJ Charities, Top Amos Charity, Ian M. Fulton Charitable Trust, the Congregational and General Charitable Trust, and the Walter Farthing Trust. We extend a very warm welcome to a number of representatives of these charities and to other individuals who have generously donated their time and expertise to assist us and have been able to attend this afternoon. Whilst I have concentrated on the building element of this project, which has proved a little fraught, the second arm of the project, notably the focus on Rosemary Rutherford, has been moving forward very successfully. A small team of individuals focused on researching Rosemary's work, and this has proved extremely fruitful, with an extensive amount of material being collated. This material has been used to inform the exhibition and a publication, and a significant amount of it will be put on the internet to be accessed by QR codes, which will eventually be found in the exhibition. We would like to extend particular thanks to Rosemary Rutherford's family, without whose cooperation and indeed assistance all this would not have been possible. Several members of the family are here this afternoon, and we are particularly grateful to Naomi, who's going to give us a talk about her great aunt's life and work. Following this, we will be formally opening the exhibition. So without no more delay, I would like to introduce our speaker this afternoon, Naomi Courtenay-Luck, who is the Great-Niece of Rosemary Rutherford. She's an English literature graduate and previously has worked in communications and public relations. Currently a mother of 2 children, and she is further researching her family history. I give you Naomi.
Thank you everyone for coming. Lovely to see everyone, lovely to see a packed church. So I'm going to start off, give a little overview of what I'm going to talk about. So we're going to look at the early life of Rosemary, her influences, her training, the war years, her religious art, the post-war years, then to end, her stained glass and her lasting legacy. So, to start off, we're going to take a look at who was Rosemary Rutherford. She was a prolific artist, from drawing to painting to etching and to stained glass making. She was a devout Christian. Her work showcases her intense religious belief. She was dedicated to her family. She helped care for her parents and her young niece, Jenny, here in the front. She was a VAD in the Second World War. During this time, she painted the fresco. Post-war, she became a dedicated stained glass maker, and her work can be found all over the country. She was a bent-end artist and worked under Cedric Morris and Let Haynes in the 50s and 60s, and her work was exhibited widely both before and after her death and continues to be shown today. So, moving on to her early life here in Broomfield. It's a lovely oil she did of the church here. She was actually born in Warwickshire in 1912, but following the war, the First World War, her family moved to Devon, Templeton, where John Finlay was Rutherford. She was educated at Badminton School in Bristol, and then they moved to Broomfield here in 1929. A lovely photograph of the early years. Rosemary sat on the lap of her father, John Finlay, who was vicar here, and her brother and her mother. Nice period photo. So that painting of Rosemary can be found just around the corner. She was dedicated to her faith, her family and her art. She was very close with her family. They were a very tight-knit family. Her parents were very conventional, and she was very close with her brother and her niece, who she helped bring up. She painted pictures of her family regularly, and I'm going to show you a few examples. There's a photo there, of her and her parents. It's a lovely photo. And then moving on to some paintings she did of her family. So that's her parents, John Finlay and Florence. And then we've got a lovely painting of them in their older years, sat on the fire here at Broomfield Vicarage. It's no longer here anymore, but as it was. And then a lovely painting of her brother, Alton, who was also John, on the left, and her mother, who she painted very frequently, on the right there, peeling apples. And then some lovely paintings she did of her niece, Jenny. It was very sweet. She loved to paint your niece. I think my little one sat here as well. I think it's a strong family resemblance. So, moving on to her family influences. Rosemary was particularly influenced by her aunt, the sculptor and anthropologist Marguerite Millward. Marguerite was very unusual. She travelled widely on her own, often trekking for days, teaching and sculpting heads in countries such as Ceylon and India. She studied in Paris under French sculptor Antoine Bourdelle. Her fearless and extraordinary life had a profound impact on Rose. Post-war, between 46 and 51, Rosemary spent much time at Marguerite's studio and house in London. And there's some lovely pictures here. So that's Marguerite on the right in the studio of Bourdelle in Paris, and that's her on the left, sat with her sister Florence, the wife of John Finlay, Rutherford here. So some beautiful, beautiful images there. So moving on to her training, Rosemary was a trained artist and attended various art schools. Between 1931 and 33, she studied at Chelmsford School of Art under Charles Archer. After that, she studied part-time at the Slade School of Art under Vladimir Polunin. She studied scene painting and decorative painting and life drawing. And then after that, she studied at the Westminster School of Art under Mark Gertler. In addition, she studied the art of fresco with Mrs. Sargent Florence, a fresco painter in Chichester. So through the 1930s, she exhibited widely alongside artists you may have heard of, including Ruskin Spear, John Nash, Edward Borden, Eric Ravilius, Henry Moore, Barbara Hepworth and John Piper. This is not a Rosemary, this is actually a Hepworth that I put in because I thought some of Hepworth's work that she did around the war. This was actually post-war, late 40s, and quite similar to Rosemary's in style. So she was clearly influenced and had similar traits. Rosemary showcased her work at the New English Art Club, and she also had work accepted by the Royal Academy summer exhibitions. So then moving on to the war years, there's a beautiful picture, again it's just around the corner, of some VAD nurses warming their feet by the fire. It's a lovely war sketch she did. So her war portfolio, this difficult period brought out the best in Rosemary, where she produced some of her most intense work, an amazing combination of vision and emotion. Her war portfolio remains an important record of what happened and who she came across. So, one of the first things she did in the war was to help some of the evacuee children. During 1939 and 1940, she assisted her father here at Broomfield with the resettlement of evacuee children. The children came from the East End of London, and Molly Hilton, a Broomfield resident, recalls the evacuees arriving here, including 15 children. And that's a lovely watercolour Rosemary did of 3 girls sitting under a parasol. And then I've got some more examples of some of the evacuee children that she painted whilst here in Broomfield. Some of the young boys, and then some lovely ones of some of the young girls that she obviously came across. So, Rosemary as the war artist. As the war progressed, Rosemary toured the gun emplacements and army camps on the east coast of England, driving a mobile canteen, sketching many camp and military activities. A number of her original sketches are held by the National Maritime Museum and the Imperial War Museum. Rosemary was given a permit by the War Artists Advisory Committee to sketch the many army camps in and around Broomfield. And that's an example of one of her watercolours. So then she became a VAD in the war. And that's a lovely sketch of a couple of nurses sat in their dorm, just chatting to each other. So her role as a VAD, on the 1st of October 1942, she enrolled with the British Red Cross as a nursing auxiliary in a Naval Voluntary Aid Detachment. She was deployed to Haslar Hospital in Portsmouth, Cholmondeley Castle in Cheshire, and Chorley Castle, Yorkshire, and then she came back to Haslar. It was during these placements that Rosemary came across both seriously injured and convalescing sailors. She painted and drew everything she saw. And then I'm going to talk about some memoirs. So a fellow VAD called Geraldine Horton, she had written a book called In No Nightingale Sang, and she encountered Rosemary as they were both VADs in the war. And she remembers meeting her for the first time. And in her book, she talks about her time at Chorley Castle in particular, where Rosemary looked after psychiatric patients. Rosemary told Geraldine that she had plenty of time to paint there. It was mostly talk, there were no bed patients. In the mornings we dusted the wards, the afternoons we spent darning socks or playing hockey with the patients, then we laid the tea. I did dozens of portraits, mostly pen and ink. The men enjoyed it as a rule, got them out of themselves a bit, but it was an exhausting struggle trying to be a good artist and a good nurse. In the end, I gave up trying to be a good nurse. So, in her book, Geraldine Horton recalls her friendship with Rosemary at Haslar Hospital. Rosemary loved it at Haslar, and she said in a quote, "Forbidding, isn't it? But I love it. It's an old naval prison, you know, about 200 years old." And she describes first meeting Rosemary as Rosemary was dressed. There was a white spruceness about her, like an advertisement for Purcell, with the newly made-up cap and the spotless apron. The drabness at Haslar pulled them all together. Friendships were formed very quickly. She recalls bumping into Rosemary, whom she'd only known for a day or so, and she says, quote, "Her face was full of joy at the pleasant surprise of seeing me as she held out her hands to me." Which I thought was a lovely quote. sums up how they must have all felt. So then moving on to some of the portraits that I've referred to, or some of the sort of haunting images of some of the patients she obviously cared for. Some beautiful, very simply done pencil drawings of some of the convalescing sailors. And another important aspect of the war was the boat building. So in 1943, she was allocated to Westcliff-on-Sea in Essex, where she was able to sketch the building of motor torpedo boats. Many of these sketches have a very spiritual element to them. And then between 1944 and 1945, she was posted to Ceylon, now known as Sri Lanka, for the Far Eastern campaign. After she left England, Rosemary returned to using vibrant colours in her paintings, always with the blue that is constant within much of her wartime art. During her time here, she was also joined by her brother, Alton, who was chaplain with the forces. I've got a lovely photo of them both on the beach in Ceylon, her in her nurse's uniform. So that's another lovely painting of the beach in Ceylon using very vibrant colours. So moving on to the fresco here in the church. On leave from war service in 1941, she painted the historic fresco in the tower of this church. This fresco of Christ stilling the storm is one of the very few examples of fresco painting in any church. It took days and days of hard work, and her brother helped her. Rosemary was deeply religious, and her spirituality guided her with this fresco painting showing Christ stilling the storm. Perhaps she was giving people hope during the frightening turmoil of wartime. So, she studied fresco painting in the late 1930s. She was keen to put her learning into practice using the complex methods of the old masters, known as the true fresco or buon fresco technique. She actually practiced with a painting of the Last Supper on the vicarage garden wall, which has since been demolished. But her father, John Finlay, vicar here, considered that the tower was part of the church freehold, so he said that she could paint on the wall of the ringing chamber here in Broomfield. And with her brother's help, they applied fresh plaster to create the dramatic fresco scene, even sacrificing their precious egg rations so that the technique should be authentic. After chipping away at the old plaster down to the ancient cobbled wall, 4 successive layers of lime plaster were applied to the area, each being allowed to dry for a few days before the next was applied to prevent any cracking. The final layer was made bright with powdered white marble. As the fresco colour is embedded within this final surface, the painting is only as durable as that layer, so it needs really good foundations. The tower was kept locked during the war, and Rosemary and her brother spent days and days chipping away. After dark, her brother Alton would carry away buckets of rubble to bury in the churchyard. So the storm. This was very much a favourite subject for Rosemary. She painted a lovely watercolour on the right of the similar scene, and also she produced a series of etchings of different religious themes, including again the storm, as you can see on the left. And then moving on to her post-war years and her start of her stained glass career. Post-war, she became a dedicated stained glass maker, and her work can be found from North Yorkshire to the south coast, and even includes work in New Zealand. St Mary's Church windows here in Broomfield were blown out by the blast from a bomb that fell in May 1943. This church and many others needed new windows after the war. And that's a lovely watercolour again of the church with its bomb damage. So there was little demand at the time for frescoes. After the war, Rosemary had thoughts of specialising in frescoes, but it was pointed out to her that actually no churches would have the funds for this, and there'd be a much higher demand for stained glass to replace all the bomb-shattered windows. Indeed, this was the case here, and she trained at the London studios of A.J. Nicholson. So, moving on to her first stained glass commissions. Her first independent commission was for the three-light east window of St Peter's Church in Nevenden, Essex, ordered in November 1950. It was installed to replace the east window that was shattered by firebombing in 1940, and the theme was the transfiguration of which Christ appeared to Peter, James and John. And then here in Broomfield she received her first major commission from the church in 1951. The single light window, the raising of Nazareth, was made in memory of Claire, her brother's wife. She went on to produce more than 40 windows for churches, schools and other institutions across England, plus 3 in New Zealand. As part of her preparation process in making the windows, she painted cartoons, a full-size painting on cloth or paper. This enabled her to lay out the glass on top of the cartoon to ensure it all fitted together. And that's a picture of one of her cartoons there. So this is just one of the examples of the many windows she produced. This is St Faith's Church in Gainwood, the corn window. This beautiful window dramatically portrays the harvest parable with the images captured by rays radiating from the sun. One of her lovely pieces she did. And then moving on to a different type of stained glass called Dalle de Verre. During a holiday in Brittany in 1960, she discovered a different type of stained glass made with thick slabs of glass known as Dalle de Verre or glass slab technique. In 1965, she was awarded her most challenging commission to date, the huge window in the Church of St Paul's in Clapton. This window, the focal point of the modern church, is 22 feet wide and 15 feet high, and it depicts the conversion of St Paul. And it's amazing, I've been to it, it's huge, really impressive. And then another example, this is her memorial window at Walsham-le-Willows in Suffolk, where her brother was vicar and where they both lived. This was actually installed after she died, in the year she died. It was a beautiful window. And then her sketchbook also contained lots more designs, and her brother went on to use her designs once she'd passed. And this is one of the examples in the church in Hindeclay, Suffolk, where he's used very modern designs, and the colours are very modern and colourful. They're lovely. So then moving on to her religious art. Her strong faith comes through all of her work. She also specifically painted many images of religious scenes. For example, this is a beautiful oil of the Last Supper. Again, this is a lovely watercolour she drew, and she's named it The Boy Jesus in Sight of Jerusalem. Uses very bright colours, and it was actually painted while she lived in Broomfield, and this was part of a series she did for a potential book. I don't think it was ever made, but she did all the designs for it. And again, it's a lovely oil of the feeding of the 5,000. Beautiful picture. It's a large oil. And then she did lots of churches, including some abroad that she also been to on her travels, including the Church of St Francis of Assisi. So then we're going to move on to the Benton End years. A beautiful example of an oil of some flowers, one of her best flower paintings. So she was part of the East Anglian School of Painting and Drawing. This was founded by Cedric Morris and Arthur Lethaynes in 1937. From the early 50s, Rosemary began a series of regular visits to Benton End that would continue throughout the rest of her life. While studying there, she mingled with fellow artists such as Kathleen Hale, Lucy Harwood, Richard shopping and Maggie handling. I've got a lovely photo here of her and Cedric giggling away. Both her and her brother were very good friends with Cedric Morris, and he had a profound impact on Rosemary and her work. And her brother Alton gave the eulogy at Cedric Morris's funeral in '82. The ethos of Benton End was to provide a place for students to live and work, enabling artists to exchange ideas and techniques in a communal atmosphere. The school's intention was to give an alternative to formal art teaching. And we've got a lovely painting here of Benton End, the gardens, with Cedric pushing the wheelbarrow, and Let Haynes is in the painting. That's a lovely image. And she did a fantastic portrait of Cedric, which is there. And then some of her flower paintings were just lovely. Her brother, he quoted her as saying, she was perhaps happiest when painting flowers. For her, this was a celebration of the bounty of the natural world. And that's one of her best examples. And again, we've got some more flowers. That's at Walsham. And we've got the apples, which she loved to paint as well, from the orchard at Charterhouse. So, at the last few years of her life, she battled with eye problems and endured 2 eye operations. She was incredibly courageous and carried on making stained glass windows and painting. Rosemary died tragically whilst in her artistic prime in 1972, whilst living with her brother in Walsham-le-Willows. Her grave can be found here in Broomfield Churchyard, alongside those of her parents, her brother and his wife. After her death, Rosemary left multiple sketchbooks and several unexecuted stained glass windows, which her brother decided to use. These windows provide a lasting legacy to an extraordinary artist. And then her very last painting she ever did before she died, she painted a beautiful painting of pink and white camellias. She came to Reigate to visit Mum, my mother Jenny, here to show her latest artwork 2 weeks before she died. And that's a painting on the right. It's beautiful, and her standing outside their house proudly showing off her latest piece. So, her lasting legacy. More recently, her work has been increasingly recognised, and her wall work in particular has been exhibited and admired. Rosemary's wartime artworks now reside in the collections of the Imperial War Museum, the National Maritime Museum, the Ingram Collection and the Chelmsford City Museum. In 2022, First Sight Colchester had an exhibition, Life with Art, Benton End and the East Anglian School of Painting and Drawing, which featured 3 Rosemarys. And obviously Project Rutherford, this fantastic project here to highlight Rosemary, a local artist, engage with the community and restore the historic fresco. I'd like to also say a huge thank you to everyone here, the whole of the Broomfield community, and obviously the National Lottery Heritage Fund for making this project possible. On behalf of Rosemary's family, we are delighted to be part of this and see how much interest there is in Rosemary's life and art. And I was just going to end on a lovely quote by another artist called Valerie Thornton, who was a friend and fellow artist. And Valerie quotes, "After being in Rosemary's company for an afternoon or for 10 days, one always felt more alive, and that life was a wonderful adventure, and that the simple things of every day held possibilities of profundity and delight." Yes, thank you.
We have a hand up here. Okay, when did she actually make the stained glass?
In their studio. So she lived in Water the Willows with my granddad, and she had a whole bit of the house where she would have had a studio. And then in the garage. Yeah. So wherever they lived, she sort of made a studio in the house where they were. She didn't have somewhere separate, but did it wherever they were busy. Anyone have any questions? Just grab me.
There's one more here. I think there used to be one of the paintings at Water in the Willows.
There is on the wall. Of
I can't remember quite
Right,
well.
talking of water, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's lovely. That's still up in the church. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, it was a great honour a few weeks ago to be standing up there giving a talk on Rosemary Rutherford's glass, looking at where she fitted in the 20th century, and of course she came sat down in the middle, it was 1950. Her early work, such as the window there, to me seemed heavily influenced by the Irish stained glass designers, Naomi, Wilhelmina Gibbs, I think. Did Rosemary ever go over to Ireland to see them, or?
I'm aware, that's not come up. No, I'm not aware if she did.
Because I know she trained with Great-Neice and G.R. Smith. And their windows are nothing like what she was doing.
Okay.
So she obviously got some influence from the modern movement that was happening at the time.
Okay. Yeah. John Finlay was from Northern Ireland, originally from Belfast.
How long would it have taken to paint the fresco, bearing in mind it had to be painted on wet plaster?
Days and days.
So they plaster a bit at a time?
Yeah.
It took a very long time to chip the plaster and then add each layer of plaster, let it dry before the red cracking. And then that final bright layer, and then I think they took 4 separate days to complete the whole painting on that final layer.
To thank Naomi for bringing us our talk this afternoon. Well done, little one, sitting so still and quiet. Right into it.
As I mentioned previously, the number of talks that we've already undertaken in this church, we produced a booklet containing information that was researched for each talk. So today I'm really delighted to announce that the next booklet relating to this talk is hot off the press. And it is available for you to buy. In recognition of their extensive contribution to the project, we would like to extend a really warm thank you to the research team. Here we have Kathy Rouse, we have Ian and Ros Mercer, we have Kathy Pearson, we have Naomi herself, and Neil with the back. They have done an enormous amount of work collating material, and we would like to present each of those a copy of the booklet. To Ian and Ros, to Kathy and Kathy.
Get some. so much for all your work.
When Reverend Diana, as a few of us, were formulating the project and the idea of creating space for an exhibition of Rosemary's life and work emerged, we had envisaged something quite simple, perhaps a few tables and a screen, maybe a banner. Remember that? Only a little faith. We had forgotten that the Lord will provide. Who was to come forth to offer their services? Not one, but two individuals who've had experience in museum display work. One in designing and creating the display furniture, the other with extensive experience in displaying items. So our little display has morphed into an extremely professional exhibition, which we are very proud to be able to open this afternoon. Firstly, I call on Reverend Caroline to extend our very, very sincere thanks, firstly to Patrick Reddings, who designed and created the display furniture. To express our thanks. Behind every successful man, there has to be a woman.
Come on, Rose.
And before Trudy continues, none of this would have happened. Can you turn me down a bit, thank you? He only wishes he could do that at home. None of this would have had the the push behind it that we needed it to continue without Trudy, who has been absolutely stoic and has worked tirelessly towards this project. So I have a little something for Trudy that she wasn't expecting and hadn't arranged.
Points I want to raise. One is that this is perhaps the end of the beginning. So we are formally opening one arm, we could say it's finished, but actually it's just started. We have completed the exhibition, we're going to open it, and then we're going to welcome, we hope, a lot of people into this beautiful church to come and look at the wonderful work of Rosemary's here that we are so fortunate to house. There are a few other things I want to highlight before we move up to that corner. There are 3 paintings around the Lady Chapel area that Naomi has brought to Family Hall today for you to look at. They are beautiful. They will not be staying in the church. Today is the only opportunity to look at these paintings, so do please go and have a study of them. It's also an opportunity to see our beautiful weather vane, which has been repaired and regilded, and that is on show. It will shortly be put back up on the top of the spire, where you'll be able to see it, but not quite as closely. So please do look at that, but please do not touch it. We do ask that you just look at it. The new booklet I've already said. What is interesting, we have a couple in Brookfield that arrange coach tours, and they have arranged one for us to look at some of Rosemary's work at other churches around Essex. And this will take place on Friday the 5th of May. You will see little notices on many of the seats. If anybody is interested in joining this, come and look at some of the other work of Rosemary. Friday the 5th of May. You will need to book via Ray and Jan Spiller. The information is on the posters on the seats. You have no doubt sitting on all put to one side. And just to say, there will be further talks on a Saturday afternoon at the end of the month. We'll be talking about the trees in our churchyard. Another talk will be on the wild life in our churchyard and on the plants and lichens in our churchyard. So we are focusing over the summer months very much on the outside. It will be lovely to see you. That will be the last Saturday of the month. And varying posters are often in our church magazine. So now I'm going to invite Carolyn to escort Jenny and Naomi to the exhibition area. I ask everyone else to stay in their seats, but please turn around. We're going to formally cut a ribbon, and a cake will be cut, and one of the bottles will be opened. These two items will be taken back to our kitchen for division and distribution, both in the hall of the church, so that you can partake of a bit of cake and bubbly while viewing the artwork. However, tea and coffee and other cake is available in the hall. I do ask that when you go through to the hall, only half, don't all go at once. You take time to look round the church and the artwork.
We do a 3, 2, 1.
Yeah.
That we cut the cake, and I'm going to ask, I don't know, our treasurer, who's also worked very hard on this budget, to pop the bubbly. You've got to see this direction, so don't see it if you're on the exhibition. We'll pop the bubbly and then we'll cut the cake. So as we take the cake out, to be cut up and distributed, and invite our guests and attendees to wander around the church, view the varying exhibitions, the paintings, the fresco, tea, coffee, another cake, and prosecco will be available in the hall. Please don't all go all at once. Thank you very much for attending this afternoon, and we hope to see you again.
Thursday.